Today, I want to talk about the insane plan or the insane idea to expose synthetic shares in a way not even the paid-off regulators could ignore. Now, this idea actually started as a satire tweet, but I actually think it's a genius idea. So stay tuned and let's make some money. And now I'll dive straight in with the key information. So, Spence tweeted saying AMC investors would be better off starting a hedge fund that only buys AMC shares. Now, I think this has obviously started as a satire tweet, but I actually think it's a great idea. Before I dive any deeper explaining why, I just want to make it clear that I'm not inciting people to come together as a group to specifically target stocks and pump them or manipulate those share prices. Obviously, as investors and as retail investors, we should all make our own decisions as to what we should do. We shouldn't be trying to come together as manipulative groups to change share prices. Now, I know through this entire investing journey, you and I have all remained as individuals buying and selling stocks that you decide to. But let's talk about why a retail investor owned hedge fund buying AMC shares would actually be a genius idea that exposes synthetics. Now, as I said, it'd be very difficult to coordinate as we can't come together as groups to manipulate share prices. That would obviously open up retail investors to lawsuits, which is never a good idea. But one thing that hedge funds have to do that individual retail investors don't is disclose 13F filings. When those 13F filings are all added together, it shows the institutional ownership of a stock. Right now, the institutional ownership of AMC is 29%. It says 154 million shares, but I guess those are the pre-split shares. But I imagine institutional ownership is still between 30 and 40%. Now, that number is just those hedge funds disclosing their 13F filings. Retail investors obviously aren't included in this count, which is obviously weird because retail investors also hold 80 or 90% of the float, which is already over 100%. But we've always wondered just how much higher than 100% of the AMC float do we actually hold? Is it 200%, 1000%, 2000%? Just how many synthetics are actually out there? What if we all came together as retail investors, which obviously I'm not inciting, and created our own hedge fund that had to disclose how many shares we held in a 13F filing? That would obviously add all of our shares into this mix, massively increasing this institutional ownership, as we'd be classed as one large institution, showing AMC's float being owned multiple times over. There's even a page on Google talking about how institutional share ownership can be over 100%. And it says when institutional share ownership exceeds 100%, it could be a warning sign to investors of one of several stock listing anomalies. So in the article it says, let's talk numbers. A company's outstanding shares represent the total number of shares issued by that firm. In a straightforward scenario, the sum of all ownership percentages should not exceed 100%. However, there are instances where institutional share ownership surpasses this logical limit. While it may seem counterintuitive, institutional share ownership can indeed exceed 100% due to the complexities of modern financial practices. And it serves as a reminder that in the intricate world of finance, not everything is as straightforward as it appears. Just imagine seeing this institutional shareholding showing 500% or 1000% of AMC shares held when retail investors' shareholdings were included on these 13F filings. Just imagine the look on the SEC's faces when hundreds of thousands of these screenshots are sent to the SEC showing AMC shareholdings at multiple hundreds or multiple thousands of percentage points. Even the data providers couldn't do anything to hide this data, as we'd be filing 13F filings with the SEC for all to see in the public domain. At that point, it literally couldn't be swept under the rug unless the SEC decides to stop all 13F filings and decides that hedge funds don't have to file a goddamn thing. Now, I also want to talk about this video of Gary Gensler being absolutely grilled by the House Committee for Financial Services on naked shorting in MMTLP.
But the investors have asked for the aggregated audited share count for the MMTLP and for the blue sheet data to ascertain whether MMTLP shares were subject to counterfeit and naked short selling. Have FINRA and the SEC analyzed MMTLP for any potential fraud or wrongdoing?
We seek to analyze fraud and wrongdoing wherever it might be in our capital markets, and certainly we're well aware of these matters, but I can't speak about specific possible investigations or even confirm or deny whether we have them, because it protects the markets. When we sometimes close an investigation and we don't find something, but certainly we could follow up staff about the specific questions about data.
I do believe, I'm hearing you say that there could be an investigation underway, but you can't give data about it. But if there is an investigation underway into these matters, and if that investigation finds answers, is that information not going to be made available to the public?
We only make information as a result of any investigation public if we either settle or bring charges in competent courts.
Well, then how are investors and, frankly, Congress to know whether you have even undertaken such an investigation or whether such an investigation has resulted in any outcome?
It's good to see the committee will be following up with Gary Gensler on his investigation into MMTLP. As Toshka pointed out, it really was a fantastic follow-up question on how do we know that Gary Gensler is actually performing investigations unless they actually charge people. In instances where companies don't settle or go to court, Gary Gensler and the SEC don't publish any of the investigation or any of their findings. They could have actually found illegal activity, but if they don't charge anyone for anything, nobody would ever know what was found. And especially as Dave Lauer tweeted, he said, I'd say, generally speaking, before you get excited about what a member of Congress might do, it's best to check out opensecrets.org to see who their biggest donators are. We know Gary Gensler and the SEC do receive tons of donations from Wall Street each and every year, which is likely why the SEC doesn't look too deep into any Wall Street crimes. Especially not the big crimes, just the small crimes where those hedge funds, institutions and smaller market makers don't donate to the SEC. Although speaking of investigations, this tweet here is very interesting as TD Bank is facing money laundering allegations. You may know TD Bank or TD Ameritrade and other brokers have just been sued by Mullen Automotive. And now TD Bank or TD Ameritrade is actually facing a US Department of Justice probe related to its compliance with anti-money laundering rules. It seems more and more of these banks and institutions, trading platforms and brokers are being caught up in lawsuits and investigations. Hopefully over the next month or two or the next few months, more and more results of these investigations are actually published. Now finally, I quite like this tweet as well. It says if you've had anything to do with the meme stock saga, regardless of what stock you like or don't like, or your feelings about them currently, you should be out supporting this movie to help spread awareness. It says corruption like we've never seen before, in my opinion, on Wall Street. He said, I'm sure there's been some shady stuff going on behind the scenes before, but this was robbery from retail in broad daylight. Now, I personally haven't yet been to see the film Dumb Money, but I have seen that it already has a 100% approval score. I don't know how it paints retail investors or how it paints out exactly what happened, but I do know that getting more people to see the Dumb Money film and being aware of what happened with AMC and GameStop is always a good thing. Whether it paints us in a good light or a bad light, it doesn't really matter because any attention is good attention. And if viewers go and watch the film and then decide for themselves to research more about AMC and GameStop, well, that's brilliant, because them going and doing their own research will mean they stumble across our research and our publications, which effectively will just bring more and more people towards the AMC and GameStop movements. Now, Nate actually tweeted saying he didn't have any plans to go and see Dumb Money, but now he's going to go and see it multiple times just to wind up Ken Griffin. Ken Griffin is obviously upset by this film, taking out lawsuits and legal proceedings against the filmmakers. We also know that Ken Griffin will never actually go through with these legal proceedings, because if he did, he'd have to prove in court that he did not lie under oath. And obviously we already know that he did indeed lie under oath, and I'm sure he wouldn't want that information coming out. He'd have to publish all of those conversations with Robinhood and exactly what was said in each one of them, which would be pretty much career suicide for him. So we know that whenever Ken Griffin takes out legal proceedings or sends threatening letters, he's always bluffing. But guys, be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always guys, be sure to ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.